we believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson, and I'm so glad to be with you again. And I just want to say tonight we have a special guest for you. Lew Gosnell is with us tonight, and he is an instructor at Gunsite Academy in Pendleton, Arizona. He has over 3 decades of law enforcement experience and a whole lot of a good dry sense of humor to offer us as well. So this should be a fun show, but full of good information for you tonight. We're going to be talking about the reality of self-defense in America today, as well as church security and so much more. So stick with me and I'll be getting to Lew in just a minute. But first, if you want to be notified about upcoming shows, please go to defenders-live.com and sign up for notifications at the bottom of that homepage. We also do have a Facebook group, but I've noticed that the reach on that Facebook group has not been exactly great. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on any upcoming show, be sure to go to defenders-live.com and sign up for notifications. And be sure to put in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I love hearing from all of you, and I'll be viewing those comments after the show. But let's get into the interview with Lew. So with over 30 years experience working as a peace officer on the streets of East LA, Lew was there to see what worked and what didn't. And this was during the turbulent years of the crack cocaine epidemic and the violence that came with it. The methods of enforcement and countermeasures that best dealt with the gang crimes and their associates committing those crimes were the headline during the news in the 1990s. A United States Marine veteran military police supervisor at Camp Pendleton, Lew served as a tactical team supervisor, working with a team responsible for special assignments as determined by the base Provost Marshal. He is an honors graduate of Rio Hondo Police Academy in 1990 and multiple commendation recipient from 2 police agencies, including the Police Star for outstanding tactics in a lethal force situation and the life-saving medal. Sergeant Gosnell developed and implemented an active shooter program, supervised the city's bike patrol services, implemented the agency's first rifle program, and was the senior range master responsible for all firearms and tactics training of all sworn personnel for the Huntington Park Police Department. As a patrol supervisor for the city of Maywood, California, he supervised a highly successful felony warrant team responsible for the apprehension of violent felony suspects, serving over 50 high-risk warrants for murder, robbery, rape, kidnapping, and narcotics suspects. Over the course of said service, there incurred no firearms-related use of force or serious injury to officers or suspects. Retiring from active peace officer status in 2021, Mr. Gosnell has devoted his professional training interest to the field of church defense and responsible and safe firearms defense for citizens, teaching at the Gunsite Academy in Pendleton, Arizona. A Superior Court certified expert in firearms and lethal force use, he teaches the specialty class of church defense and defensive use of rifle, pistol, and shotgun at Gunsite Academy. He also lectures on-site security to all faiths and community groups across the United States. Wow, what a bio. Let's welcome Mr. Lew Gosnell onto the show. Hi, Lew.
Hi, Laura.
I don't know why I keep wanting to say Gosnell instead of Gosnell. Anyway.
Oh, well, the differences are symptomatic of all English pronouns, but yeah, you're fine.
Tomato, right?
That's right.
Right. Well, so Lew and I have, I don't want to say we have a history, But I met Lew for the first time in 2020. I was the recipient of a scholarship to Gunsite Academy, and very, very grateful for that, because if I wouldn't have had that, I probably wouldn't have been able to attend. And it was definitely my first out of state firearms training. I had gone to some local trainers here and there, but I hadn't gone very far. And so it was quite a journey to get down there. It was quite an experience to be there. And you guys welcomed me with open arms. Your staff was incredible. You guys were so organized and well put together. I really appreciated that. And everything was made very clear as to what was happening, where to go for what, and that was really helpful. What I remember about you, Lew, though, specifically, is okay. We joke about this, but when Lew's not smiling, he's really scary. And he's one of my favorite people because he has an incredible sense of humor, and honestly, one of the best hearts of anyone that I've met. But just to meet him without really knowing him, and that's how I was when I first came on to Gunsite. He was the lead instructor for my class. I was a bit intimidated at first, and it turns out, Lew, that's kind of part of your secret sauce, right? You don't want to come out of the gate being all smiley, and this is serious business, right? I mean, we have to make sure everyone is being safe. They clearly understand what's needed, and so you were so good at that.
Well, on the lighthearted side, and this is the fun sidebar story. The owner of Gunsite, Buzz Owens, has been very clear in his dictates. He gives his instructors free rein to deliver the doctrine originated by Jeff Cooper, and that consists of the modern technique, which is constantly evolving. But on the side of that, there is the fact that the owner says, don't let the students shoot themselves. Don't let the students shoot another student. And then lastly, don't let the students shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
So now we all know where we exist on the priority list.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to come out strong in the front part, because we're third on the list of people to keep alive.
Yeah.
So that's the instructor part.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes total sense. But I mean, me not knowing what to expect going into that, I was almost on the verge of sir, yes, sir at the beginning. and then, going through the day and everything, you start to see, the other side of Lew come out, and it's really endearing, and it's quite nice that you do have both of those sides to you, so to speak. And I appreciated that when I was taking your training, because there was never any question what was expected. And everything was made very clear. I, for one, very much appreciate that kind of structure, especially in a class full of, they're quite large, the classes are, a class full of complete strangers. And you never know what you're getting into, right, Lew?
Well, they start as strangers, right? But then over the course of probably about a day and a half before the ice breaks and people remember everybody's first name, and then they start talking about the kind of guns that they're using and why. What do you like about this? What do you like about that? Oh, can I try that? Well, maybe later on. And interest, how you got to Gunsite. And as those stories get exchanged, bonds are formed, and often people become friends for life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I could ever forget, the not just many of the students that I formed a bond with, but the instructors as well. The instructors are all on the same mission, but they all go about it in different ways. And in our class, I think there were, I don't know how many, I don't know if they were AIs, I assume you would call them AIs in your class. I think there were at least 2 other instructors, and everybody comes about it in a different way, but we all land in the same place, right? And I think it's important to have that experience, because one student might relate better with a certain type of teacher or certain, way of teaching versus another. And I think that that's helpful as well. And one of the things I enjoyed the most about going to Gunsite was being able to be involved in the shoot houses. And I forget what it's called, the valley with all the steel targets, and you have to walk down through the valley. And
We call those outdoor simulators, but they are.
I thought you had it. I thought it had a fancy name.
Oh well, I'll let me think of one out of the geology book, and I'll come back. But
Okay.
no, they are desert washes, sometimes called arroyos. Jeff Cooper, the founder, liked to use African references to describe those, like either wadis or dongas. Dongas is a very famous outdoor simulator that we have, and that's a name from the African continent.
Okay.
And so forth.
Yeah, those are the names I was thinking of, I think.
Your memory's not gone. You're fine.
I remembered you.
Well, maybe you're not fine, but yeah, go on.
No, anyway, no, I just want everybody to know that if you're unsure about going to an academy, like an actual huge establishment like that, don't be intimidated by that, because as I said before, their staff is excellent, really top-notch people, great hearts, and it comes through in everything that they do. And you'll meet people and become lifelong friends with them, and in the objective will probably be met. I mean, as far as will you be able to learn the skills you need to learn? Absolutely, without a doubt. As long as you're there and you keep your ego checked at the door and be humble about it. That's really important. We talked about that, Lew. That's really important to learning anything new. And we talked about too, not thinking you know it all when you get there is really important, because I guarantee no matter who you run into, you're going to learn something new, right?
Well, that was certainly my experience when I first came to Gunsite. I'd been a peace officer for 14 years, not counting my experience in the Marine Corps as a military police supervisor. I'd been a successful competition shooter in USPSA and sports like Steel Challenge and even cowboy action shooting. And in my experience in East Los Angeles, working for a very, very busy police department in one of the most densely populated areas of the county, I had been in several very, lethal-like outcomes. And so when I went to Gunsite, I realized, going through the training there in my first class with the very, very respected and but late Pat Rogers, very outstanding instructor, New York City police officer, supervisor, and extremely well known, that I had simply been lucky in my encounters, oftentimes on the streets, working the job. The skills that I had before I went to Gunsite were pretty good, but I realized that the training I got at Gunsite was years ahead of what I had been given at the police academy, what I had gotten from regional training in Los Angeles, and it just opened my eyes. And so I try very hard to convey that to people when they come to Gunsite now. I'm very fortunate to be an instructor, and I like to share at least the importance of keeping on training. But let's go into the next thing.
It's it should be a never-ending learning journey, honestly.
It has to be. It has to be. There's always going to be the next lesson.
Right. Yeah. And if you refuse to learn it, it'll come the hard way sometimes. And we don't want that to happen. You said that you really enjoyed being an instructor. I'm curious, what is it about being an instructor that you enjoy so much? And I don't want to compare apples to oranges, but are there some parts of being an instructor you enjoy more about than what your, previous life was, so to speak, or vice versa? Or is it just a different chapter?
It's a different chapter. As a government employee working for municipalities, working in the military, as a trainer in those arenas, it's the same process. I very much enjoyed seeing the confidence build in the people that I was teaching, and seeing their skills increase. Working at Gunsite, it's a different story. These are people, regular people, teachers, professors, plumbers, electricians, professional people in all crafts, and they are spending their own money to get the training that they know is going to help them to make better decisions, be able to evaluate circumstances in a more critical fashion, and keep them out of trouble. And if push comes to shove, they're able to respond in a thoughtful and morally just manner. And very often those decisions never have to be made because of the training they've had. They're able to avoid bad situations, or they see them coming and are able to get around them. So that kind of satisfaction in the job I do is priceless.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the avoiding the situation in the first place. I had Steve Tarani on, I think it was either last week or the week before, and he mentions the iceberg analogy, which I'm sure you've heard before about, the ideal thing is to see the iceberg coming and then make choices so that you can avoid the iceberg to begin with, right? And I think that's a great analogy. And it sounds like that is what you believe as well, as being a very important part of self-defense. It's one thing to become skilled at shooting a gun, right? That's very important. But without the component of having the other side of the equation, which is what's between your ears to make good decisions, really you're missing probably the most important part, would you say, if you're not learning how to make good decisions about using that firearm?
Well, a lot of my experience I could describe as being anecdotal, in that working in a high crime area, having a great many contacts with very violent people, people who are committing crimes that you read about in the news, carjackings, rapes, sexual assaults, kidnappings, attempted kidnappings, shootings, drive-by shootings, etc., gang attacks that are retribution or revenge, ongoing. The officers that were involved in so many incidents that it became commonplace, where in one area of the country, if you had a murder in a county, one murder, it's news for the whole year. In Los Angeles County during the 1990s, homicides were over 2,000 a year, and
Wow.
In more than one instance on one shift where I worked 3 homicides during one shift. That's not 3 homicides at one place. That's 3 separate scenes of homicides during an 8-hour shift. Luckily, we are not living through that right now in most areas of the United States. But the officers who were able to handle that kind of a workload were very often the most competent shooters. And these competent shooters were very often involved in the least number of shooting incidents during their careers. And I think that was because of the confidence that they had and their ability to size up a situation using that confidence. Am I in trouble? You could think, well, yeah, probably, but I'm going to wait and see what happens before I start to do something and see how it plays out, because they knew their skills and they knew what they could do. So they didn't have to push as hard as maybe somebody else with lesser skill had to do. But that's anecdotal. I can't put a percentage to that. I can't say, hey, this happened 700 times, so we're going to break it down.
Right.
That's just my feeling.
Right. Well, and that leads me to a conversation we had last night or yesterday. I don't know. It was yesterday sometime. I don't know what time of day it was.
Well, it's a blur, right?
It is a blur, yeah.
Remember, we're traveling hundreds of thousands of miles per month, but go on.
You talked about I don't know how else to say it, but the reality of being in a violent encounter in America right now. You said you were talking about hypervigilance and that a lot of people are hypervigilant right now. Could you speak to that again? Because I think that was one of the most important messages that we talked about last night.
Well, we've all heard the phrase that whatever bleeds leads in news media. Okay, we've heard that. Statistics do not bear that out as currently held in the United States. There's a little juggling going on as far as politics, but I won't get into that. But per capita crimes against people in the United States are lower now than they were 40 years ago by a great deal. Homicides are down, certainly, per capita. And we talked about this before, and I don't have the exact numbers because they're written down somewhere. But if we took out some major metropolitan areas in the United States and left them alone and put in the rest of the United States, our homicide rate per capita would be somewhere in the bottom 20 countries in the world. When we include the major metropolitan areas, Chicago, well, I'm not going to name cities. In fact, I'll subtract Chicago. They get picked on enough. But you can figure them out pretty quick because they're major metropolitan areas. We take those out, and the rest of the country is calm. They don't have problems. Talk blue states, red states, whatever. It's not a big deal. But you can look at places that have the highest per capita gun possession, that is legal possession, households, etc., compared to those that are restricted, and you're going to see a difference in crime rates, especially violent crime rates and outcomes. The hypervigilance part comes in that people keep getting told that crime is bad. You know, get ready, pay attention, don't travel alone, don't go out after dark. It's like, slow down. Let's look around at where you are and what is happening where you are, and then have a more, thoughtful take at what is going on. And it may not be that bad. So that's I think we were talking about that.
Yeah, and I found that to be very informative because a lot of people I talk to are getting this sense of, I guess a sense of fear, honestly. And, I think that leads in our media as well, unfortunately. And, whether or not you want to speculate as to whether they feed that fear or not, that whatever. But, on one hand, we need to be prepared for whatever may come our way. On the other hand, we don't need to be afraid of it, whatever that might be. And having a realistic point of view in the matter, I think, is really important. So I appreciate that you brought that up, because we as Americans, if we have not lived and or traveled to other countries that are much more dangerous, according to the statistics, than America is, then we don't really have a true understanding. And so I found that to be very helpful, what you said about that. And you talk about this idea of what's important now. Can you explain what that means? What's important now?
Yeah. What's important now, when in the context of when we train at Gunsite, we're talking about the use, particularly of a personal defense firearm. The idea of what's important now is what is happening now. What are your circumstances right now? And so how do I get out of that circumstance? How am I in trouble, and how am I going to get out of trouble? And if it comes to, I'm going to have to use a firearm to get out of that trouble, then what's important now becomes just that. It becomes a procedural problem. How am I going to use my firearm in the most efficient manner to save my life or save the lives of other people that are important to me, or even strangers who are not involved but are at risk? How am I going to be thoughtful? How am I going to use the least amount of force that I need to be able to save myself or others? And then how am I going to explain this to other people? So the immediate problem is, I'm in trouble. My life is at risk. Somebody's trying to hurt me or kill me. I got to deal with that. If I don't know how to use my firearm effectively, then I'm in a lot of trouble. If I do know how to use it effectively, then I need to do that. And I need to focus on that particular problem. At Gunsite, we teach people how to safely handle their firearms, how to safely handle them efficiently and quickly, and be accurate with them. And we hold them to very high standards. You've seen this. You've talked about your experience in the shoot house and how that affected you emotionally. Well,
yeah,
that's one of those things where the more you do it, the more you train, the less emotionally involved or affected you are, and you're able to be more objective. And you're able to make better decisions without emotion involved in them. That's just that's training. That's what the military does. That's what law enforcement agencies do. That's what pilots do. Okay, when they have
inoculation,
and on and on and on.
Yeah.
What's important now is always changing. Once I solve this little part of the problem, then there's going to be something new that I have to solve, and so that becomes important now. If we talk about scenarios, okay, and we can look to the news for all sorts of things that have happened to other people, study them, and take good points and negative points away from those, and look at things that went right and look at things that could have gone better for those involved. The what's important now part is, I'm in danger. Somebody's shooting at me. I need to move to a place that's safer or gives me cover from those incoming bullets. I need to return fire if I'm capable of doing that. If I can, I have to be thoughtful about how I'm going to shoot those rounds at my assailant. Okay, I can't just go, oh, they're shooting from over there, and shoot over there. No.
Right.
Your return, your defensive fire has to be accurate. It has to be thoughtful. You have to know that you can't just shoot because, oh, there's danger over there. Because you have to be sure of what's over there.
Right.
You have to positively identify what the threat is. You have to make sure that that is the only thing that you're dealing with. And then once that is taken care of, let's say you do hit your assailant goes down. Now you have to think about other people who might have the same idea and not misidentify you as being the bad actor in this event. Oh, shoot, you have a gun in your hand. People show up and see you with a gun in your hand. Now you're the problem. If you're thinking, oh, I'm the good guy here, everyone's going to know. No one is going to know. Not until everything settles down and people are able to solve through it. So not getting killed after you've just saved your own life becomes the what's important now part. And it goes on and on and on. And you can cascade all of these things that are going to be happening afterwards that you have to worry about. That's what what's important now means. It's always changing.
That's so valuable. I wish that you had a book or a blog or something that went into that in so much depth. There's so much we could unpack just with what you just said. Whenever you talked about positively IDing your target, that was something that we not only were told, but practiced at Gunsite in the shoot house, because we could go into a room and see, oh, there's somebody there. And if you're not really keeping your brain engaged and not seeing what's in their hands and is that a threat to me, then because you have to make those decisions. And what he was referring to in the shoot house for me, before I went to Gunsite, I wasn't 100% sure. I had this doubt in the back of my mind. I wasn't 100% sure if I were put in a situation where I had to pull the trigger, could I really do it? And when I was in that shoot house, I know it's a simulation, but there's so much adrenaline going and stress and everything else that it feels like real life. And I kid you not, when I walked through a doorway and I saw a man holding hostage a boy who, in that moment, I swear I saw my son's face. I fortunately rose to the occasion and did what I needed to do quickly. And well, I guess you call won that fight, or whatever you want to say. But in that moment, when I did that, I was able to keep my emotion at bay and use my logical thinking in that split-second moment and make a good decision and get around on target quickly. All the things you had been teaching, right, the whole week, all came together in that moment. And I was able to prove to myself that, yes, if the time ever came, I actually could do whatever needed to be done. And again, you can joke and say, well, it was a simulation, but I would like to challenge you to go into one of those simulations with lots of adrenaline and stress and tell me it's not very close to real life. Again, I'm not you, Lew. I haven't been in those real life situations, but it's as close as I hope to ever come to it. I hope I never have to be in that situation in real life. But that was probably the most valuable takeaway I got from the entire week.
Well, I would challenge anyone that often the simulations that are presented at Gunsite can be more difficult than an actual criminal scenario.
Really?
That people experience. Yeah, because one of the things that is overlooked, and Tom Gibbons has done a masterful job of tracking this. Tom Gibbons is a instructor out of Tennessee, and he has a very, very good program where he has tracked students that have been involved in lethal force situations. They've been the victims of crimes and have been able to respond with a firearm, either having to shoot or just present a firearm to fend off their attackers. And the identification of the criminal assailant compared to the identification of criminal assailants or criminal actors by the police. If you think from a statistic standpoint, in Tom Gibbons, his students, how many times do you think they misidentified their assailant?
Did he give them any kind of simulation training?
No, we're talking about actual crimes being committed against his students.
I know, but had they gone through it before, like when they were in training? Or do I not get to know that?
Yeah, they had been training similar to Gunsite. They had been given choices of identification of targets and so forth.
I mean, my gut instinct is like 60% made good choices. I don't know.
Okay. It is 100%.
Really?
It is 100%. You know why?
Wow. Why?
Because the criminal assailant tells you who he is.
Ah.
He is the one holding the gun, saying, "Give me your wallet. Give me a ride to the ATM." He's the one kidnapping you. He's the one who's saying, "I'm robbing you, and if you don't do what I want, I'm going to shoot you." The police don't have that advantage when they show up. They don't know who anybody is.
Mm-hmm.
They have to identify the good and the bad and all the in-betweens. So
I never thought of that before, Lew. So civilians then, I mean, that's not a good way to have an advantage over law enforcement, but you're so right. I never thought of that before.
No, you know who is trying to put you in the van so they can
Yeah.
sexually assault you or sell you in trafficking. You know who that is.
Yeah.
They tell you.
Yeah. Well, that's a different situation. I mean, just slightly a different situation in an active shooter thing, because you could hear gunfire but not know where it's coming from and have to go ID. But it's not hard once you get close enough.
Right.
But still, there's that chaos ensuing and everything else. So that would be a little different, wouldn't it?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm learning a lot. I see. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new.
It's only been 35 minutes.
It's like I knew that, but I'd never considered it before.
Well, here's the thing. We're all normal. Some of us are more normal than others. But, it is unpleasant to think about things that are unpleasant. And
right.
We all as a regular person, we think the best usually about ourselves, and we think the best usually about our friends. That's why they're our friends. And when we're faced with things that are unpleasant, people who are unpleasant, people who are dangerous, people who can't be controlled, those unpleasant things we push aside. We don't want to deal with them. We want professionals to deal with them. We want the police. We want mental health professionals to help that. We don't want to do that. But sometimes, boom, there they are. And they're right in front of us.
Right.
And so we don't have choices then, unless we've planned for that, trained for that, and have some sort of response already thought of. What am I going to do if this happens? What if this happens? I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do this. Maybe you've heard this before.
I have, yes.
Yeah. Well, you talked to Steve, so there.
Okay, well, that's a perfect segue into the next portion that I want to talk about really quickly, and that is church security. And I think probably one of the most powerful things that you talked with me about last night was this idea of, have we actually, you were talking about choosing a church security team is what you're talking about. Yes. And you said that, that have we really considered the level of sacrifice we're willing to offer in a situation of that, like that, in a church defense situation? Could you elaborate on that?
I will. I'll start off with the topic of conversation that not often, but sometimes came up with the men and women I worked with in police work at the agencies where I worked. And that was, if this happens, we might have to do this. And the idea is, you don't get paid. I'm talking about law enforcement officers. I'm talking about peace officers that I work with. You don't get paid for what you do. You get paid for what you might have to do. Okay. Well, what is that? Well, radio calls. You get a radio call. You have to go to that call. You don't have to come back. What?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Yeah.
You have to go there. You don't have to come back. And that's sacrifice. Now, we know that going in, police work is dangerous business. We're talking about setting up a church security team. And when I say church defense, let me go into that a little bit. When Gunsite came up with the idea, and it had been talked about for a while, of offering a specialized class for just that, developing a security team for religious groups. It's completely non-denominational. Gunsite does not have a care in the world about who comes to protect themselves from a religious standpoint. There's no put up all the symbols and all the symbols are welcome. Well, almost all the symbols are welcome. We have the communist devil cultists. That's probably, we're going to look at that. Home. But just keep that in mind. If there's any communist devil cultists out there that are offended, Well, never mind. So the idea of sacrifice. When bad things happen, people have to do bad things to stop those bad things. This goes round and round. The only way to stop a bad person with a gun is to have a good person with a gun there to be able to stop them. There's Google search of people that are making suicide type attacks against whatever they're going to attacking against, whether it's a knife attack, whether it's a gun attack, whether it's an explosive attack, whatever it is, they're attacking. And most of them are on a one-way mission. If they come out of it, good for them. That's maybe a hope, but it is a hope that is 17 or 20 down on the list of hopes. They are coming to do the most damage they can for a purpose. And we can't figure out whether it's hatred, whether it's zealotry, whatever, but they're coming. Not often, but they're coming. They're out there. Okay. So when we're asking the security team to do something, volunteers, we want volunteers to help us, keep riffraff out of the church. We want to keep weirdos away from the preschoolers. We want to have safety on the playground. We want all these things. And the people that are going to volunteer for those security jobs have to know that if things are going to get worse than just some drunk hobo that comes in asking for food and maybe a couple of dollars, it could be something much, much worse.
Mm-hmm.
It could be somebody wearing an explosive vest. And so when you're asking for people to volunteer, you want them to understand that their job as a volunteer on the security staff, on the safety committee, on the defense part of the whole thing, as a guard, let's use the word guard, because that's what you are, might be to wrap their arms around somebody in an explosive vest, drag them to the ground, to give other people the ability to run away and hold that person there while they explode. That might be what you have to do.
I don't think most people think of something like that, honestly.
Well, we know that people do think about that because we have endless examples of military personnel throwing themselves on grenades to save their comrades.
I mean, church-going everyday civilians.
Hold on.
Okay.
This is the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And guess where our military personnel come from? They come from everyday people all across the country. True. And they always have. And those are the people that will throw themselves on top of grenades to save their comrades. And it's the same thing when we're talking about people that care about those that are in their congregations. They will do the same thing. But you want to ask them first so they can think about it. It's something to think about. It's not a disqualifier. You could say, oh man, I don't think I want to throw myself on a grenade. I think I'll just, umpire the softball team. Okay, great. But other people will volunteer for that. And there are other people that will step in front of that gun to save other people. They're everywhere. They are everywhere. Trust me.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for changing my mind on something. It came out of my mouth and then you said, no, that's where those military people came from, is every day. Yeah, you're right, Lew. You're so right. So that just proves the point that it's really not about necessarily that you're former law enforcement or former military or whatever title thing it's a heart issue. Really, it's a heart matter. It's about, are you the type of person that's willing to do that? And are you willing to get the training to give yourself the best chance of making the right decisions in the right situations, all that? But it all boils down to your personal willingness. Truly. And you're right. That is something a person really should really think about. Yeah. And I think those of us who carry, it's not that we haven't thought, honestly, I'm just speaking from my own experience, I have thought about many scenarios, but that is one I have not thought about before.
Well, it's
So,
far-fetched. And it's rare.
yeah,
It is rare.
yeah.
Fortunately, in this country, it's extremely rare. But it's not unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to go down the history channel of explosive attacks against all sorts of concessions in the United States and its territories, but it's more than one. Okay, so yeah, we have plenty of very, very, very brave people who will always step up when things are the bleakest. So that's not my greatest concern. My greatest concern is people being complacent. I'm not talking about hypervigilance. I'm not saying, there's a boogeyman under every blade of grass. We don't have that. But going back to church defense as one of the things that are a priority as things to pay attention to is reporting just regular crime. Regular crime. What is regular crime? It is vandalism. It is petty theft. It is car burglaries in the parking lot while services are going on, or while normal business is being conducted around places of worship. The reticence of parishioners and administrations that oversee these different settings are reluctant to report crimes or people that are suspicious. Why? Because churches, synagogues, temples are welcoming on purpose, right? That's the whole mission of the golden rule. We want to help people. We want to have a humanity towards others. So we're going to overlook things that would normally be reported to the police, would normally be reported to the sheriff, to law enforcement. No, that's a big part of my message is that no, we need to let the local authorities up on the radar when we have problems, because once they get up on the radar and we get to look at them, then if those people need help, those people need to be prosecuted, if those people need to be safer for other people to be incarcerated, we need to do that. That's what real humanity is. Not leaving people out to cause destruction, but to get them the help or to get them at least controlled so they don't offer danger to others. It's a simple message, but one that needs to be expressed all the time.
Yeah, that isn't something that I would think would be an issue. So I'm glad you brought that up. As you were talking, and we're almost wrapped up here, but one final thing I want to leave everybody with, and that came up while you were speaking, is I'm curious to know, you said that we have to consider for ourselves what kind of sacrifice we're willing to endure for others. I'm curious to know when did you make that decision that you were going to be that person? Or is that not something that really you had much consideration for?
No,
It's just always been that way.
I've been involved in public service since my teenage years as an Explorer Scout for the sheriff's office when I was 14 on a search and rescue team. And
wow,
going into the woods or going into the water to save somebody that was about to drown, and taking those kind of risks, learning how to be a diver for rescues or recoveries, the going into the Marine Corps and being taught and mentored by men who had served in Vietnam and suffered, some of them terrible wounds, recovered, and continued on in the military service. I saw that sacrifice as something that was a responsibility to emulate if I could.
Mm.
And I've been very fortunate in that, fortunate, lucky, watched over. You can look at it all different ways, but being in tight spots and not being seriously injured, not being killed, I've had a very good run, but not to be lighthearted, but one of the things that always cheered me up about the work I did and going into a potentially dangerous situation was that if things didn't work out, my family would be taken care of, and I would get a very good funeral. So I'm not being flippant. That was actually something that kept me, kind of cheerful about things. Now that I'm comfortably retired, I feel even better about things, right? So being able to help others, being able to give them perspective as they come through, and I have the opportunity to offer some training to them and some insights on, the minutia of firearms work and marksmanship and discernment, etc. That's what I think about now. That's what I think about.
Wow, that is a full life, Lew. For sure.
Well, off and on. There's been lags, like any place. Commercial breaks.
Well, I'm certainly grateful for you, for sure. And you're somebody I will never forget. And you've made an impact on my life. And I'm just really, as you were talking, I was just reflecting on the fact that I can't believe that just even 3 years ago, I was taking my first Gunsite class, and probably 3 years before that was my first ever gun class. And now I'm hosting a show all about self-defense, and I get to have you on my show. I mean, it's just really surreal for me, and I'm very honored to have you, and I appreciate your time tonight. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we go?
Well, two things. Elections have consequences, and everywhere. And things aren't that bad, probably, wherever you are. So with a grain of salt, don't listen to the news 24 hours a day. It'll work out just fine.
That's really good. I think a lot of people need to hear that right now, for sure. I do. I hear it all. Well, Lew, we should probably wrap it up for the night. Really appreciate you having you on the show. You've been a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful and honored to have you here.
Oh, it was my honor. If I look back and say, hey, look what happened. Let's be proud of her. I'm proud of you.
Oh, jeez. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up for the night. I can't handle compliments like that. They'll make me cry. So, did you enjoy the interview with Lew? I certainly did. If you got any value out of that, and I just think what he brought to the table was so valuable, please share with somebody you think that would get something out of this show, out of the information that Lew provided. Share this content out if you really enjoyed it. One thing before I let you know who's coming on the show next week that I want to remind you of is we have a Defenders Live community on locals.com, and I want to thank all of my paid members there. You guys have no idea how much it means to me that you're willing to put your money towards this community. I'm doing my very best to offer you some really great content there. And that content is our Defenders Uncensored series And there's a reason why it's on locals.com and not on other channels, probably because we would get kicked off. So if you're interested in, I think there's 5 episodes of Defenders Uncensored there right now, where we talk about current events and topics and issues that are considered controversial, but we don't think they should be. And we just have a good roundtable discussion here and there with different people, with lots of humor, lots of truth, and a very good time. It's good to get some things off your chest once in a while. So be sure to join us there on locals.com. Go to the Discover tab and search Defenders Live, and you will find it there. So next week, we are planning on having Chris Serino on the show. Chris has spent over 30 years in law enforcement. He has been a police officer, a SWAT operator, a firearms instructor, federal agent, and international level trainer. He was also on the History Channel's Top Shot program. I don't know if you guys ever tuned into Top Shot, which catapulted him into a career in writing, gun TV, and competition, eventually leading to his own training company, Chris Serino Training Group. If you have any particular topics or questions, especially for Chris, that you'd like me to ask him, feel free to email me at laura@defenders-usa.com. And a quick shout out here, I just wanted to add, if you are interested in any training with Lew or any of the team at Gunsite Academy in Paulden, Arizona, make sure to check out these links. I've got the website coming through on the bottom of the screen, Facebook page Gunsite Academy, and Instagram Gunsite Academy. And they're also on YouTube. So be sure to go to gunsite.com, check out their schedule and what classes they're offering. There is always something going on at Gunsite, and I really encourage you to check that out. And so we'll plan on seeing you next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Until then, take care.